Hey everybody, we're about ready to get started. Everybody okay? We're passing around munchkins right now, so hopefully you guys can get a little food in you before we get started. You're going to need the brain power, because you're going to learn a lot today. Alright, I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about how this weekend's going to run. So, our tutorials will be centered here in Town 100. This is the first one. We're going to go for about an hour of just talking. And during that time, I ask that everybody shut their laptops. We're just going to teach you things, and then afterwards, we're going to go through an actual activity where you'll be working at coding. And at that time, we'll have mentors going around. Who are the mentors here? Anybody raise your hand? Yeah, and a lot of them are coming a little bit later. I told them to show up in like 20 minutes. Yeah, so we're going to be headquartered here. If we have not enough space here, we have a live stream set up in Rowan Chen. So if this room gets too packed, you can always go over there. So this first one is split between me and Pranav. I'm going to talk for a few minutes, Pranav is going to talk, I'm going to talk again. And then we're going to go through an activity with the mentors walking around. Around 2, we're going to let everybody go and take a lunch break. And then we're going to reconvene at 3. And Lewis Ellis is going to teach Introduction to Node and JavaScript. If you guys don't know Pranav or Lewis or me, I think you guys are very lucky. Pranav is, well, not necessarily for me, but Pranav is a really good teacher. He's a 160 TA, and anything you see related to PennApps that looks nice, like any of our posters or website, is made by him mostly. So give him a round of applause really quick, if you can. Lewis Ellis will be teaching the tutorial later today and the 2 tomorrow. He's the head 160 TA, and I've heard a lot of great things about his teaching. He's a very experienced Node developer, so I think you guys are in for a good time. I'd also want to thank really quickly all the other people that made this happen. Everybody from Alex, Trudy, and Sahil, who helped with the logistical planning, from the founding philosophers and PennApps, to Derek and Colin, who are here recording this, so you guys can watch it later. And all the mentors who showed up either at the last second or volunteered to come. Just want to thank everybody who's here. Okay, so at this point, I ask everybody to close laptops if you have them open. And we are going to get started. So there's a website online that you guys can look at later to see all the material we're going to go through today. The link is on the board and it's also up there. I'm just going to kind of step through some of this that Pranav and I made earlier. I just want to say that this is probably not the best time to tell you this, but we're not actually teaching you like 100% how to code this weekend. Don't expect to walk away from this and be able to just make like perfect Node apps and be able to perfectly code everything. We're really here to teach you tools and tips that we've learned over the past few years. There's really no way for us to teach you everything, because coding is really just like seeing new problems and figuring out how to solve them. So we will teach you some good strategies for doing that, but we can't actually like teach you everything, so you need to put in a little bit of effort on your own. If you get lost, that's totally normal. Feel free to raise your hand and ask us questions. We're all expecting you to. And if you feel like you're really lost on a particular topic, feel free to let one of us know. I'm happy to teach an extra tutorial next week to fill in gaps. Particularly, there might be a big gap between the material we do right now and the Node tutorial that Lewis starts next. So if you feel like you're still a little bit lost on JavaScript or anything like that, I'm happy to teach a tutorial later in the week. We're really just here to help you guys learn. So we are happy to do whatever it takes to make sure you guys actually get something out of this. All right, so building your first web app. You're welcome to follow along. I'm just going to kind of hit on some of the main points that are on the website. This is an overview of what we're doing today. the basics of how the web works, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and how they interact with each other. We're going to get everything installed for the later tutorials, so you'll be ready to go, and you don't have to waste time there. Teach you how to do some basic things with command line, like install packages with Node, and use the Mongodb shell. Okay, so welcome to the beginning of your web app coding career. The first thing that I think is really crucial to teach everybody here is how to solve your own problems, because as I said, we can't teach you everything. We would need a textbook that's insanely massive to teach you every problem you could possibly encounter in your entire career. So we really want to teach you some tricks for figuring out problems as they arise. The first one is we are teaching you how to talk to us. We've introduced you to some mentors and some of us. You're more than welcome to ask us questions at any point if you run into problems. I know I've taught classes before and taken people on tutorials before, and they'll message me like months later asking, how do I bring up terminal, or how do I do that thing that you taught me? I'm more than happy to answer. Feel free to ask anybody you see in comp sci that you recognize. We all really like helping each other. This is kind of my introduction to proper Googling, as I call it, because that's actually extremely crucial as a computer science major. You're frequently going to run into problems, and you'll be by yourself, and it'll be like 3 in the morning, and you don't really know who to ask. And Google is probably your best friend. Just make sure that when you're looking things up on Google, you aren't too wordy, you're not putting in things you don't need, and always start with very specific words. Like one example that I go into here is if you're making a web page and you just, like if you want to have a banner at the top, it always just puts a white border around it. And I ran into that problem this week, and I could have searched like a whole sentence about what my problem was, but instead I started with the word CSS. Always try to start with the language that you're struggling with, and I figured it was CSS because that's the language of styling, as we're about to tell you. And I put in a couple other words, like I think it was no border or something, and I just went through the Google results and kind of skimmed through them, took the code samples that I saw and tried them in my code, and it ended up working after the first couple. So again, that's very normal. Feel free to use Google as much as you need. Stack Overflow is also your best friend. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but this is the tool that pretty much all computer scientists use every day. It's essentially a forum where people have coding questions and ask them, and then other people answer them. And there's so many questions at this point that almost anything you run into will be answered pretty neatly on Stack Overflow. And people can like upvote answers and downvote answers. So if you Google something and find a Stack Overflow result, that's usually the one you want to go to first. For the things we're teaching today, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, the W3C schools is kind of almost like the dictionary for what we're teaching. It has a list of like all of the different CSS tags and HTML tags and everything else you could need. So if there's like something in particular you don't know what it does, you can just search it there. Or there's a particular function you're looking for, you should look there. Some other tools that are good if you just want to like learn on your own. BentoBox has, or I think it's just called Bento now. It just has tons of resources for anything that you could possibly need to learn in computer science. Codecademy or Codecademy has lots of tutorials, but they tend to be a little longer. They have some nice like make your own website things that are pretty cool. And Dash General Assembly also has a lot of really good like web tools and web tutorials if you want to learn that. That's actually how I learned CSS, so highly recommend it. Okay, so how does the web work? So you start out by entering in an address. In some, it might be google.com. In this case, it's thedyingphilosophers.github.io/codeweekend. And your computer sends a request to a server at that address. And the server is called the backend. Here's a nice picture. The server is what we call the backend. So it's a lot of the logic that happens, any of the logic that you need to actually do things on the web happens there. And the server just sends a web page to your browser, and it has all the information it needs to render the website and make it look nice. The part that looks nice is called the front end. That's generally like the HTML and CSS. Yes, so web pages tend to load things in weird orders. So if you've ever had trouble loading Facebook before, you'll notice that they like load all of these boxes but don't actually fill them in. And the reason they're doing this is it usually makes sense to load like the actual page itself first, and any content that needs to be like dynamically updated, you know, like other people's posts, things that are happening like right at that second. They take a little more time, so you usually do them last in case the website's taking a long time to load. You still have the framework there. The worst thing is if you just like load the dynamic stuff first, because it'll be very slow, and then when it comes, you'll just see like random boxes of text and won't really know what they are. Okay, so you want to take over here?
We'll go ahead and do that. Thank you. Just gonna. Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes, great. Bryn completely forgot to introduce herself, but she's actually a senior, and she was the director for PennApps all of last year, so she's literally the coolest person in this room by far. So just like everyone, just give her a round of applause, because she's awesome. Okay, so I am going to go and find my desktop. There we go, great. So there's a lot of stuff on that desktop. I bet no one can read this, right? Anyway, we'll get there. So I'm basically going to talk about some basic HTML, CSS. It's basically the front end. So as Bryn said, whenever you go to a website, you're basically making a request off a server. So your browser tries to go to an address, it goes and finds the server, and the server does something and sends back basically, it's usually three things. It sends back an HTML file, some CSS files, and some JavaScript files. So to understand what's happening on this web browser, we need to understand really what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are. So HTML is basically just the information. It's just all the information that goes on the page. So like this text, we just have this as plain text in HTML, and like it would render pretty much like this, just plain text. CSS, however, is what actually makes the page look good. So like, this is red, all this text is centered, we've got an image in here that's centered nicely, it's not just stuck on the left-hand side. All of that is done with the CSS. So the CSS decides how to actually display things. HTML is just what gets displayed. And JavaScript's actually kind of fun, like you can do really cool things with JavaScript, you can make animations, and we'll sort of get into stuff we can do with JavaScript later, but JavaScript's really cool. Like it basically runs inside your browser. So what servers do is they send a JavaScript file to you, and this is just a bunch of code that runs in your browser. So it's extremely fast, it works really well, and makes things look pretty. That's pretty much it. So let's sort of start with understanding what HTML is. HTML is pretty much, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. You really don't need to know what that means. I don't think anyone does, but it's basically a language that allows us to just mark up information. So I'm going to try and zoom in on this somewhere. Tools, view. Can I just like zoom in? Yes, I can do that. That's great. Can everyone sort of read that? Read it one more time. Okay, so this is just a plain HTML file. It's also there on the website, so you know you can look at it later. I like this because it highlights stuff in different colors. So this is just simple HTML, and the thing about HTML is that everything is basically, you can think of every HTML tag as one object. So every HTML, anything in HTML is composed of tags. All these tags start with this and end with these angular brackets. And every tag that we open needs to be closed. We close a tag by just writing the same tag with a / right before its name. So every tag that's open must be closed, and we can place the information that goes into that tag inside of it. So this allows us to do cool stuff like sort of nest things. So we have an HTML tag here, and inside this HTML tag we have a head and we have a body. These two things are actually really important. So every HTML file needs to have an HTML tag because that that basically tells the browser that, look between this point and this point for all the information that we're going to show on the web page. And inside this, we have the head tag. The head tag doesn't actually contain any of the information you see on the page. The head tag is just sort of information about what the page is. So if you look at this wonderful thing here called title, doesn't actually show up on the page. It's what you see here. So like, this is the page we're looking at. This title field basically shows up here. So if I were to change this to, here it is. So let's change this to blah, blah. I can't even spell that. See, it changed there. So this is basically information about the page. This thing that says meta character set UTF-8 is not important, but it's nice to have because it's telling the browser that we're using English, which is useful because that's the character set that it wants to render. So if you were using, say, Chinese, it would be something else. I don't know what that is, but it would be something else. This is just a description of the page. So if I were to post a link to this page to Facebook, let's say, then have you ever seen in Facebook, like when you post links, there'll be an image and like a short description next to it? So that's pretty much what goes in here. So we'll come back to what this last tag is, but basically any HTML tags which have this exclamation mark, hyphen, hyphen, and then anything in between is just a comment. So it won't actually show up on the page. It's just for, it's like making your own notes as a coder. What is this stuff? So what, like this is, it's, here we go, we can look at that. It's just a comment. If you look here, it's between like this heading and the paragraph, right? But you don't actually see anything. It doesn't actually show up on the page itself. It's just a comment for us to leave notes for ourselves and to leave notes for other coders to make life easy for them when they ever come back, when they look at your code, for example. If someone else picks up your website and needs to make some updates or changes, say you're working at a company and you've made this and then you leave, someone else needs to do it, then these notes are really helpful because you can understand what they've been doing. But after the head tag, the body tag's really where, we do anything that really, really matters. All the information that goes on the page itself comes between body and /body. So here we have h1. This is just a few tags. There's a lot more tags in HTML that we can use to do a lot of different things. I'll go through a few of the popular ones in a second. But h1 is basically the main title of the page, or the heading 1, basically. And h2 is heading 2. So as you can see here, it's a little smaller. And you can go on all the way down to h6. So it allows you to get different levels of headers and sort of information and just organize the information on your page quite nicely. P is basically just a paragraph tag, and we will go into what that is in a second. So here's a few other common tags. A is used for links. So this thing you see right here actually is what we would call an HTML attribute. So most HTML tags, all HTML tags in fact, have attributes. And the A tag is special. A stands for anchor, which is what someone decided links should be a long, long time ago. So basically href is an attribute that says where we should link this bit of text here. So if I clicked on this bit of text, it should go to this link. So let's actually try and copy this into our paragraph and see what that looks like. Right? And we have a link here that goes nowhere, so let's do something. Where do you want this to go? Anyone? Okay, I'm just going to go to Google then. Let's be boring. Sublime does that a lot. So we now have a link, and it goes to Google. So it's really very simple. That's all the tag is, and it allows us to create links. The img tag is also great because it allows us to create images. So it's exactly the same idea as the href thing that we just looked at. src is the attribute that tells this image tag where to look for the image it wants to show. And alt is basically, well, what if I can't find the image? Then what do I show? And it just shows whatever text you put in here. The interesting thing about the img tag is that you don't really need to open and close it because there's actually no information that goes in the tag, like between opening and closing an img tag, so you can just close it in the initial thing itself. So this is a full img tag, since it's just looking for an image and showing that. Some of the other stuff, EM is for emphasis. It basically italicizes text. Strong is for bold, basically. UL and OL are a little more fun, so let's actually try creating this. UL stands for Unordered List, and OL for Ordered List. Wow, that was weird. So the thing about UL is that this just tells the HTML that we're starting an unordered list here, but how does it know what's a list item, when does the list item start, when does it end? So that's what we use the li tag for. So if we add an li tag here and another item there, and then close the UL, and now if I refresh this page, I should have a list. So it's really just that simple. This is how plain HTML will render it. We will see what we can do once we add some CSS styles to it to make this stuff look a little better. But HTML can basically organize all the information you would ever want to show on a page in a really, intelligent and sensible way. Script is a slightly different tag. Script is where we actually add some JavaScript. So we will come back to this in a while, but script, basically there's two ways we can use script. We can either add code inside here, so we could just open a script tag, write a bunch of JavaScript, and close the script tag. Or we could add an src attribute to script, which would go to the file which contains JavaScript, which is a much better way of including JavaScript in any website. So that's what you should always do. But it's good to know that you can be lazy at times when you're not actually going to use the code, but you're just trying something out to just put it inside your HTML like this. It's pretty nice. Div is actually probably the most commonly used HTML tag, or maybe not common, but it's one of the most useful HTML tags. It allows you to demarcate different parts of your body, so you can have like a lot of divs. So you could have one div. So if I look at this website, right, what we have here, then starting from here, this whole simple HTML and CSS section would be inside a single div. So it allows me to sort of logically categorize information and sort of figure out what should go in each area and keep them separate so that everything doesn't get mixed up. And more importantly, it allows us to use identifiers. So I haven't really talked about CSS yet, and that's because we don't know what an identifier is. So we have all these HTML tags, right? But how do I know, how can I select this text and do something to it versus this text? How do I know that they're different? Because all I've done till now is just put them in different bits in different tags, but I can have multiple tags, right? I could have another P here and have something different in this paragraph. And I don't know how to select this versus selecting this and make this look different from this, because they're all just in P tags. So that's where the idea of identifiers come in. We have two types of identifiers that we use in HTML, and we use these identifiers in the CSS to apply styles and different kinds of looks to different things. So we have two types of identifiers. We have IDs. IDs are unique to any one element. So once I give, let's say, this H1 an ID called, let's say, main title, I cannot give this same ID to anything else. So now I have a way to uniquely identify this individual element on my web page, right? I could now select the main title and do something with it. I could make it big, I could make it red, I could make it rainbow colored. I can do stuff to this because I now have a way to select this. The other type of thing is classes. Classes allow you to do something to a lot of elements. So I could say that, I want this to be of a class red text. So now I can say that any HTML element with the class red text, and we can see that there are two of them here, right? Any HTML element with this class, I can apply some property to. So I can have multiple elements, and I can just be applying the same styles to them. And the cool thing about classes is actually you can have multiple classes. You just separate them by a space. So I could have red text and big text. And if I applied something to red text, that would also apply to this. And if I applied something to big text, that would also apply to this. So you can sort of chain classes and use them in multiple places. So it makes it really convenient when we get to actual CSS. But like, how are we actually going to use CSS? We haven't actually seen any of it. And CSS is never in the same file. So that's why I said we'll come back to this thing. This is actually how you add CSS to your HTML file. This tag always goes in your body's, in the HTML's head. And basically it's saying that, you know, we want to link a style sheet, which is basically what CSS documents are. They're telling the HTML this is how we want to style this stuff. So we're linking a style sheet to this HTML document, and href is similar to what we saw with the image tag and the a tag, which was the link. It's just the path to the main.css file. So now that we have this in here, let's actually look at what CSS looks like. I think this is better. So CSS allows us to do a lot of things. There's a million CSS styles and different attributes that we can change. I've just shown you a bunch of different ways we can get to things. So for example, the body, we can do three things in CSS. We can select three different kinds of things. We can just select body. So if we were doing that, then we're just saying we want the body tag. So we're saying that everything in the body tag, or every single body tag, so that's why I have h1 as well. So that's just saying any single h1 tag needs to follow these such style attributes. So now if I go back here and refresh this with the CSS, it looks horrible, but it looks different, right? So what we've done is we've said, let's take the entire body and add some padding to it. So we've said you should be 50 pixels from the top and 100 pixels from the left. It might be the other way around. You can always Google that. Then we've come to the h1 tag and we've said we want the font size to be 40 pixels. Let's say I made that 400. So, you know, it's actually doing stuff, and you know that it's doing stuff. So this is the font size. We made the font weight lighter. Let's say we make it bold. It got bold. So it's really, really simple to do stuff with CSS and actually make your HTML look different. This dot red text is how we select a class. So anytime we want to get to a class and say that anything with the class, in this case red text, should have these styles, we put a dot before the name of the class, and then we apply the styles. So let's say I add something else here. Let's say I make the font size small, right? It's gotten tiny. So that. So it's applied to anything with the class red text. If you also see, it's done the exact same thing to our title now, because class takes precedence over tags, and IDs take precedence over class. So that's sort of something to remember, because tags are the most general you could possibly get. Classes are more general because you're still selecting multiple elements on your HTML page. However, you're not saying that I'm picking this particular one, whereas that's what you're doing in an ID. So the ID is the most specific you could possibly get, and that's why ID takes precedence over everything else, because you're saying I want this one element to be different from everything else in this class, which is why you're picking it out by its ID. So if I went here and said font size, and IDs are preceded by a hashtag pretty much. So that's easy to remember, hopefully, for everyone that likes Twitter. Let's make that 30 px. And now this has gotten bigger. Even though our paragraph, which has the class red text. So the class red text is saying that your font size should be small, but then we've given it the ID intro paragraph or intro paragraph. So that's taken precedence, and that's given it a font size, which is bigger. So that's basically a really simple idea of what we can do with HTML and CSS. Like nice HTML, nice web pages normally have a lot more HTML and a lot of CSS to make them look nice, but it's all the same idea. Like you can Google what tags do what, and you can Google for attributes that in CSS if you want to add gradients, if you want to add, there's CSS even does animations now. So there's a lot of stuff you can do, and it's very easy to find out how to do it. You literally Google CSS animate something, and you'll get a million results telling you how to do that. So it's really easy once you understand the basic format of how these things are set up. Yeah, so you should look through the resources like W3C Schools and look for Stack Overflow results in Google whenever you search for HTML tags or CSS attributes, and you'll find it really easy to come up with something really cool really quickly, because these are actually this is as simple as coding will ever get. Also, the CSS and HTML files I've been playing with are on the website here. So you can go ahead and download these later on when we actually open it up for all of you to start working on something and turn it into something really cool. We'll get there in a bit though. Another really nice thing is that if you're using Chrome or Firefox, you can just right-click anywhere and click Inspect Element. And you get this thing which shows you the HTML of the page you're looking at. So I just inspected the element in this paragraph I was looking at, and it showed me the HTML here and the CSS styles that apply to that here. So if I say change something here, let's say I change the color to red. That just changed to red in real time. So this is actually a great way, so I can make this font size 30px. And it's gotten bigger. Or I can make it 10px, and it's gotten tiny. So this is really a great way to play around with your web page and sort of just decide how things should look. After that, you should obviously add it to your actual CSS file, because this is all temporary. The moment I refresh, all of that's gone. So that's just something to play around with and sort of figure out what looks nice, how you can change things. It's really useful, and it saves you a lot of time, because otherwise you'd have to keep coming back here, changing things, coming back here and refreshing, and it gets really annoying doing that. So finally, let's look at a bit of JavaScript. Firstly, JavaScript is not Java. There's the fact that they share the first part of the name is just like a historical mistake. There's almost nothing in common. You cannot create classes in Java. There is no main file. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry, because Java is not important at all to this. But JavaScript is. So let's look at a little bit of JavaScript. The cool thing about JavaScript, right, is that you can run it inside your browser. So if I come to this Chrome Developer Tools and look at this console, I can basically run JavaScript in here in the browser and look at stuff happening in real time. So I'm just going to use this to sort of show you some JavaScript. So let's start with like trying to create a variable. It's really easy. JavaScript doesn't have any types. You don't need to worry about calling something an int, a string, a double, a boolean, nothing. You write var. Oh wow, this is tiny. Yeah, so you write var. Let's name the variable. Can't spell. And let's call this 24. I don't know, or 42, because that's nicer. And I hit enter, and I get that, and that doesn't tell me anything, right? However, if I hit my variable, not typing. My variable, it tells me 42. So it saved my variable, and now I can just access it by typing in its name. It's really simple. Let's say I created another one, my variable 2, and give this the value true. Now if I go for my variable 2 it gives me true. So JavaScript can figure out what you're doing. It'll figure out the type. And that's really awesome. So I can create a string as well, right? Let's say my variable 3 is a string. And now it's giving me the string, which is kind of odd. And JavaScript's compiler does odd things. Like in these two cases, it just said undefined when I created the variable, and in this case, it just gave me what my variable is. So be a little wary of it, but it mostly works in ways you'd expect. Sometimes, because of its lack of typing, though, it will do weird things. So if you have a string, which, you know, if you have this string 3, it might treat it as a string sometimes. Sometimes it will automatically convert it to an integer, and then you won't know what's happening. So be a little careful with that, but don't worry about it too much, because mostly it's just a lifesaver, and it makes your life so much easier because you can just not worry about types at all. Another thing about JavaScript is functions, obviously. So there's a couple ways you can write functions. You could say, I'm just going to copy this stuff because it makes my life simpler. You could say function, and then the name of the function, what the function takes in. Oh, I don't know what I just did, but now if I hit square, that was not the right spelling. 2. It works. So this is one way to declare a function, but you could also say, you know what, I like saying var square. So then you can do this and just say function number, and then, you know, put in the same function here. And now if I said, yeah, I didn't return. Oh well, okay, yeah, here we go. Forgot to return. Now I can go there. Yeah, and it works. So unlike me, try not to forget to return, because you've always got to return something. That is where it's kind of similar with Java. Any function needs to return something, otherwise it will just do stuff. And if you just want to do stuff, that's fine. But if you actually wanted to give an output, then make sure you have a return statement somewhere in there. If you don't know what we're doing with functions and variables right now because you don't have too much programming experience, don't worry too much, but sort of try and follow along. They're very simple concepts. It's almost the same as math. We're just creating values and accessing them. And functions are basically doing some job for us, and we're giving them a name. So it's really simple. If you know what an anonymous function is, you can do really cool stuff with that in JavaScript. If you don't know what it is, don't worry at all. But this right here is basically an anonymous function. So we put the function itself inside parentheses, and then we're passing the value 5 into it. And we haven't given this a name, so it has to run as we create it, but it works. And this is sort of one of the things about JavaScript syntax. You can also do other stuff like return a function. So you could have a function that returns another function, but we really don't need to get into that. If you're interested in it, you can look it up. It's on our website, but that's not important. Another really important thing about JavaScript is objects and the way it treats objects. So if you look at this here, this is a JavaScript object. So again, it's the exact same thing as declaring a variable, but what objects allow us to do is it allows us to give names to fields so that we can just access the name. So if I type, so let's create this object. Ooh, something's wrong about that. Okay, let's create a new one. Let's say name. Come on. Okay, so now if I typed in variable 1.name, I get this field. So it's really simple. It's a great way to sort of store information because you can just have the key and the value. I don't know why I keep right-clicking, but you can have the key and the value, and it's really easy to access the value because you just type in the variable name, dot whatever the key is. It makes life really simple. You can also have arrays in here, so you could have, oh, that's why this is drawn. I screwed up some syntactical stuff there. I'll correct that on the website. But you could also have an array in here. So, you know, one of these things could return an array. So let's create, I don't know, variable 2. And make this an array where this thing, where names returns a list of names, right? So now if I said variable 2.names, I get this array of stuff. So it's basically everything in JavaScript, all information is split between objects and arrays, and you can have objects inside arrays or arrays inside objects. And once you have those two options, you can pretty much do anything with them. So you can nest like so many objects inside other objects. You can nest arrays. It's really great. And that's why actually now JSON, which is JavaScript object notation, is used really commonly to transfer information across the internet. Whenever Facebook is basically loading all your Facebook posts, it's making a request from the server, and the server sends back the information in JSON. So like it's basically just a JavaScript object. That's all JSON is. So if we looked at like something in JSON, can you see that? So this is just a JavaScript object. It has one field. So this is the only key, employees. Oh, there's 3 keys actually. And employees just really returns an array of employee objects. So each employee object has a first name, a last name, and this is just an array of employee objects. So this is how JSON usually looks. And some websites still use XML, which is an older format, to transfer data over the internet, and that looks a lot like HTML, but I don't like it because it looks bad. Yeah, that's all I have to say about XML. So hopefully that was like a pretty not too complicated, like a reasonably simple introduction to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We're gonna let you take those files that I was just playing around with and actually do stuff and create your own personal static website later on today. So that will be a good deal of fun, and we'll be around to help you sort of figure out how to do things, what syntax you want to look up, what you want to create. So that'll be fun. Hopefully that was useful, and I'm going to give it back to Bryn to sort of go over command prompt. And I am bad with that.
Great. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Okay. Usually I'm too quiet for this to actually work, so let's see. Okay, so just a quick show of hands. Who here has like heard of terminal or command prompt or worked in it before? Oh, okay. Good deal. Okay, so I'm just going to go very quickly over some basics, and then I'll get into a couple cooler things we can do with it and some things that we'll need to be able to do later in the weekend. So if you've never seen terminal or command prompt before, terminal is like the Mac and Linux version, and command prompt is the Windows version. If you search on your computer in Finder or up here, you can find it pretty easily. I already have it. Yeah, okay, it's all there. I have it down here. I moved it here so I could access it really quickly. So let's see. Okay, cool. So this is my terminal. Yeah. Yep. Yay, okay. Is that a little easier? No, I don't know. Okay, cool. All right, so this is what a terminal looks like. It's, if you've never seen it before, it's essentially like Finder, but the like not pretty version of it. It's much more powerful than Finder though. It lets you do a lot of things to like move files around and edit files that you can't do with Finder. But it just displays like it allows you to jump through your directories and look at your files and pull them up and edit them. So the first command I want to teach you is ls, which just lists everything that's in your directory. So right now we're in the directory for the website that Pranav and I made, and it just lists all the files that are there. So like index.html is the main file that you see. Assets has all the JavaScript and the CSS. Some of this is stuff that Lewis added for slides, and just a couple other things that aren't super important. So whenever you want to make a new directory, which is just make a new folder, you do make do. And there it is. Cool. All right. When you want to create a new file, you use the command touch, which is kind of weird, but that's what you do. I can't really explain that normally. And it should also be there. So when you're trying to move a file, you use a command mv to move. And also, this is probably the most useful thing I'll tell you right now. When you hit tab, when you start like typing something, it'll autofill it in. If you're in a directory and you type in like half of your title, and there's nothing else with the same title, and you hit tab, it'll just fill the rest of it in, so you don't even have to bother with typing everything. That'll save you like crazy amounts of time. So we're moving the new file into new folder. And cd is how you change directory, enter new directory. So new folder, and new file is the only thing there. Okay, there's not a lot of complicated stuff to do with that. Another quick thing I want to show you guys how to do is, we call it shell scripting. I don't want to go super into what that is, but if you type the name of a program, essentially, a command line program, you can run it. I should have npm. Usually install things. That would be odd. What should I install? Okay, we'll have to figure out why that works. But normally, because normally that works, but you can type in the name of something and you'll enter a command prompt. So I know we're not doing Python, but this is kind of how it works. So what I just did is I entered in the program that runs Python scripts. So now I could just type like a Python script and it would just run it and give me answers. Yes. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the short version of how you can run programs from command line. The two that you need to know are npm, which we're going to install, which apparently I also need to install, and I think Mongodb we're going to install. So, where's the website? All right. So on the website, we have very extensive directions about how to install various things that we'll need. Okay. So the main things you need for this weekend, Sublime Text is the text editor that Pranav and I like to use. It's really pretty, which is awesome, and it makes things look nice. As you can see, it has something called syntax highlighting, which highlights particular parts that do different things. So sometimes it'll highlight different HTML tags so you can see where they are. It'll highlight actual text white in HTML, tags are pink, and fields are green, and then like the actual information is yellow. And it has built-in syntax highlighting for most common languages, so you don't need to install any of that. And again, there's links here for how to install it. It's pretty straightforward. And you can just run it down here. You can search for it and run it. Node.js. So I don't know if we've really gone into what Node is. It's a web framework. So it's essentially just a common way that people have discovered to write JavaScript-based web applications. So it has a lot of like built-in structure that somebody decided was necessary. So like you store all of your HTML files in a folder called views. And it's built such that other people can write packages for it, and you can install them with npm and use them very easily. And it saves you a ton of time. That's really like the whole point of Node, is that you can install these things that other people have made and use them really quickly, and you don't have to make like crazy things on your own. And I go through instructions here for how to install this on Mac and Windows and Linux. And MongoDB is the database service that we're going to use tomorrow. So we're going to install everything now just to make sure you can do it while we have all of the mentors here. And the other thing we're going to do is leave it open to you guys to play with static web pages. So normally when it's a bottom. Okay, yeah. This is kind of the common thing to do when you teach HTML and CSS. We leave it open to you to make your own web page. Pranav has, I've since fixed this, but Pranav and I have samples, and so does Lewis, of web pages we've made before. So you're welcome to just put some of your own information there and play around with the tags, play around with the CSS. Again, we have lots of mentors here. They're all wearing name tags like this. And if you raise your hand, we are more than happy to help you and point you to resources. We ask that you try to Google things first, and if you're struggling, we can definitely help. And please do stay and do that, because that's the most useful thing we have for you, is us being on hand to help you get things set up and get things ready. Does anybody have questions before we jump into this? Yes.
Okay. I've used like the command line thing before. I know there's like a command to make you go up a directory. I don't remember what that is.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
This is useful.
That is very good. So when you're jumping around folders, the folder that you're currently in is, the shortcut for that is dot. So if you do cd dot, you will just stay in the folder that you're already in. If you want to jump to the folder above you, that's called dot dot for whatever reason. So we just jumped up into the folder right above. It's just, thank you for pointing that out. That's just like some shortcuts that make it a little easier to jump around. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you get in trouble for stealing HTML CSS on the website?
Do you get in trouble for?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
So if you go to like some whatever website and you know like the source code or whatever, just copy and paste it.
Okay, so most of the time you can actually like go to a website, and if you're in Chrome, you can just click File, Save, and you can just like save the static website.
Yeah.
But if it has anything dynamic, so if you went to Facebook and saved it, like you wouldn't get updating posts because that's all happening on their backend. You can't do that. So you can only save static websites because they don't actually update anything. So all their code is just in the HTML. Anything that involves some code on the server, you won't be able to save. If you just copy the HTML though, you probably won't get any of the linked CSS and JavaScript files. Whereas if you like go to File and click Save, you can save like the whole folder along with all the linked files and images and whatnot.
So the answer to that is it's very easy to do, but it's probably not a nice thing to do. And in general, it doesn't really matter with like websites like this. Although you waste a lot of time like trying to figure out how it works and how to fix things. So it's generally better just to make your own because it's easy. And I think we're not going to have time for this today, but I'll probably do a tutorial later this week that's like using Bootstrap, which allows you to make websites actually look really nice by borrowing their already written CSS files. And it's super common, and a lot of people at hackathons just make their websites look nice really quickly with Bootstrap. But all it is CSS and JavaScript, which we've already kind of taught you what that is. Other questions? Okay, so we're going to open this up now to let you guys install things for the rest of the weekend and play around with static web pages. The mentors are just kind of spread out and hanging out in the back somewhat. So we'll be wandering around. If you need anything, just raise your hand. Yep. Oh yeah. What? Wait, what's Sublime version? Sublime 2? Yeah. Guys, one other quick thing. we ask that you try to work in groups if you can. It makes it a little easier on us to like get around to everybody, and it's a little easier on you because you don't have to like just work on things alone all the time. So try to pair up with the people next to you and work through your problems together before you call one of us over.